Whitewhale is an arbitrage platform where you can come in, deposit some UST, and Whitewhale will take that UST, they will pull it in with a bunch of other people's deposits and use that for different arbitrage opportunities within Terra. Now, they've been out for a few weeks now, so what we want to do in this video, we'll be covering how much money is Whitewhale actually making from the arbitrage bot. And on top of that, we're actually even going to compare their performance to another competitor. But for starters, welcome to Crypto Saver. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase. In this video, we are going to be critiquing Whitewhale. So before we get into that, I do want to start out with some pleasantries. So I've had the chance to listen to about half a dozen different community calls that Sebastian, the founder of Whitewhale, has had with their team on Twitter. I've also looked at their interviews they've had on YouTube, how they talk on Discord, and I have to say, Sebastian and his team do come out as very genuine people. You do not get the feeling from them that these are a group of individuals that are looking to simply send out a mediocre product in an attempt to just make a whole bunch of riches very quickly. I do not get that feeling from them. I think they're actually truly trying to create something very beneficial and a great yield opportunity for people like myself. So I get it, even though the results in this video may not look that great, and for some of you it might even be discouraging, I do think this is one of the early steps within their platform, and hopefully with time, they will begin to provide more value. Now, with that being said, let's get going. Now, I do want to start out by showing you how the Arb Vault still look like on Whitewhale if you haven't had a chance to look at this. Right now, all they have available is the UST Vault. You'd come here and you would deposit money. As you can see, right now, I have $100 deposited in here. The only stats that are available to you would be the total deposits, which is just above 31 million. And then also the current APR, which is 19.50% plus. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, what Whitewhale does, if they are not using your money right this moment for an Arb opportunity, they will have that money deposited with an anchor. So at the very minimum, you should make that anchor yield. If the Arb bot is making any profits, then your annual return should be what anchor's yield is, plus the profits of the Arb bot. With that being said, it should also be fairly obvious to understand that the more UST that is deposited within the UST Vault, the less and less of a return you would see from the Arb bot profits, because the returns that the bot is making is naturally going to be spread across that much more depositors. So how does a typical Arb opportunity look like, at least the ones that Whitewhale is going after? So what we have in front of us right now is a successful trade that Whitewhale's Arb bot has taken. And if we look here, the quickest way for us to judge how much the bot made was to see how much UST was used to enter the trade, which was $15,871.23, and how much UST did they receive at the end of all of these swaps, which is $15,883.83. So in this case, we can see that they ended up making maybe between $12 to $13 on this trade. But how did they do that? Like, what's the actual opportunity here? Well, if we scroll below, we kind of get a better picture here. And the picture is this. So in both cases, we notice there was two swaps there, Luna UST. But the first swap went through Astroport, and the second swap went through Terra swap. So I'll help you understand this. Whitewhale saw that there was a whale that was attempting to exit out of their Luna position using the Astroport pool, Luna UST Astroport pool. Now, naturally, when someone of large whale is trying to exit a position, right, they want to get UST, and if they sell their Luna into that pool, what they end up doing, they end up adding Luna into the pool while drawing UST out of that pool. Since their trade is large enough, they're able to actually shift the price of either asset. And in this case, they likely made UST to be more expensive than $1. UST should typically be pegged to $1, but in this case, from this trade, it could have been that UST was actually, let's say, at $1 or a penny, maybe $1 and 2 pennies and so forth, right? So it's trading about 2 pennies more than it should be. So what Whitewhale does, when it sees that the current pool is valuing UST at $1 and 2 pennies, they will come in and use their own UST, well, the UST that you and I deposited within the UST Vault on Whitewhale, they will take our UST and they will use it inside that pool to purchase Luna. Because now you're able to buy more Luna than you typically would be able to, because your UST is being valued greater than 1 in this particular pool. And once they grab that Luna that they were able to buy, Then they head over to Terra swap, where UST is pegged to 1, right? So it has a proper value. And then they sell their Luna and they get UST back in return, which we can kind of see here, right? So they used all this UST here to purchase this much Luna. Then they went over to Terra swap and they swapped out all this Luna for that much UST. So they're taking advantage of UST going off peg in one pool, but not in the other. And typically in almost all of these cases, it does seem that the advantage, what they're typically doing is when it gets off peg to the upside, meaning that UST is actually being overvalued. At least from what I can tell from looking at all the successful transactions that whitewhale has had. So I do want to point out that this is a smart contract address for whitewhale. If you want to be able to access this link yourself, I'll drop it in the description below. And as we scroll below, the first thing that should stick to us are these failed transactions, right? So this whole page, except for one transaction down here, everything is a failed transaction. So what's going on here? Why are there some transactions that are failing? Well, to understand that, we have to go a bit deeper technically to understand how Arb bots, whitewhales, even other people's, what they're actually looking for. So as we saw in our example, we know that for UST to go off peg, to be more expensive than it should be, it does require a whale to come in and move that pool around. Well, whitewhale or other Arb bots, they do not wait to actually visibly see the fact that UST is now off peg. Right? They're not waiting for a whale's transaction to actually be validated on the block. If that was the case, it would be too late. So they have to go a step back. And what they're actually looking at is a thing called a mempool. Now, some of you might not be familiar with a mempool, but the idea is that when you submit a transaction at first, you might notice that it actually doesn't confirm right away. And there's a reason for that. Any transactions that are submitted right this moment, they first join a mempool. It's like a different database. And they sit in this mempool until it's time to validate them in the next block. So what whitewhale does, they monitor the mempool, the transactions that are pending. And if they see there's a trade within that mempool that's large enough, and it is going to trade in a specific pool where their size and that pool size, when they crunch the math and they see that that pool then would have an asset price to this, an asset price to that, they know that's an opportunity over there. So then they place their own trade to take advantage of that right away. And their trade ends up joining that mempool, right? So very likely that when that random person's transaction, the whale's transaction, is confirmed, it's confirmed in the same block as whitewhale's bot would be, or any other Arb bots would be. When we're seeing a failed transaction, what it tells us is that what they also do here is, so when a random whale puts their transaction through and it's pending inside the mempool, and then whitewhale adds theirs also into the mempool, if some other Arb bot came in and also managed to get their trade in also, and it's kind of it went in before whitewhale's trade would be, well, when these transactions begin to get validated, they get validated in order. So the whitewhale's trade clicks through, there's that Arb opportunity. Then another Arb, their transaction gets processed successfully. And then when it's time to process whitewhale's transaction, whitewhale also sets up parameters saying, well, only process our transaction if the following parameters are still true or correct. And in most cases, it fails likely due to the fact that their own smart contract can look at this and say, that Arb opportunity is now gone. We likely got beat by someone else. So if it's failed, it's telling us very likely someone else beat us to the punch, that someone else who's monitoring the mempool was able to get their transaction in before we were able to do so. So when it came for us to process our transaction simply did not attempt to process it because the opportunity was no longer there. So with that explanation, let's go through a few pages here to kind of gauge how the bot has been doing. So we have all these failed transactions on the first page. We do have a winner here, right? We have a winner here for about, it's going to approximate, this looks like, what is it, about $8 or so. Let's go over to the next page. Scroll through all of this. These are all failed. There's 25 transactions, by the way, on every single page. Yeah, oh, there's a winner over here. So in this case, it looks like we made about under $2. Let's go through here, another failed, and we'll go through one more page. And a bunch of failures here as well. Okay, So something I want you to note right now before we move on to the next part. Notice that every transaction has a 37 cents fee. No matter if it's approved or failed, there's always a 37 cents fee. Now, what I did, I took the last 7 days. I went through all their transactions, whitewhale's transactions, and I wanted to see how successful have they been. And these are the results. Now, right now, it's January 28. And my data goes up to January 27, so up to yesterday. And I went from the 21st all the way to the 27th. Notice the columns that I have here: failed transactions, how many successful transactions, how much fees were paid, transaction costs, and the fill rate would be how many times were we successful. Net gain would be the winners minus the amount of fees paid. So on the 27th, which was yesterday, there were 2 winners in these amounts, but we ended up paying $172 in fees. Whitewhale lost $162 that day. January 26th, we lost $170 after fees. January 25th, we lost $95. January 24th, $209. $116. On the 22nd, we lost $40. No successful transactions on that day. But on the 21st, we did make some money. We made $18. $18. Another thing that we see here with the fill rates tends to be around under 2%, in many cases even under 1%. But as it stands right now, based on the data for the last 7 days, whitewhale is not making money. After fees, it is not making money. And what I want to point out right now is this message from Sebastian on the Discord, where someone asked him about the failed transactions. Who's paying for those fees? And Sebastian said, right now, the team is paying for the failed transactions from the development funds. Because again, we are still testing the bot. Once the bots in the platform are mature and profitable enough, we will propose migrating the transaction fees to be paid by the vault itself. So you might be seeing a higher yield right now on whitewhale than you typically would on Anchor. And you might be under the belief that the Arb bot is profitable, but it's actually not. I mean, what's actually happening is simply whitewhale team is paying for the transaction fees out of their own pockets, basically, and just giving you the gross profits. That's actually what they're doing. But obviously, that's not sustainable, right? Sebastian himself even said it at some point. They want to make sure that those fees will be paid by the UST Vault, which is us. Now, I want to bring up a competitor of theirs, okay? So here's the competitor, and we're going to scroll down the page, right? So we do have some failed transactions. Okay, we have a winner over here. We have 2 winners over here. Okay, let's go to the next page. Go to the top. Okay, a winner, a winner, a winner, another one. Go to the top here. There's one, another one. 2 over here, 1 at the bottom, and we'll just do one more final page. Wait for this to load. Okay, 3 winners at the very top, another one. And okay, that's it for the page. Either way, I have an Excel sheet for them as well. So let's look at their numbers here. 220 failed transactions, 40 successful ones. They paid $97 in fees, a fill rate of 18.18% to make $17,860. Okay? Looking at these numbers and looking at whitewhale's numbers, it reminds me of this. And as we go down the list, again, each separate line here is a different successful transaction that they had. They did have a mega winner here. $15,500 they made off a single Arb trade, which is crazy. Now I get it, that's an outliner for sure. Now I didn't go and cherry pick these dates or anything along those lines. I just took the very recent date that I had to work with, which was January 27. I mean, even if we remove the date out of the equation, they still managed to make $2,300, right? After fees, they still managed to do that. And so not only are they making great profits per transaction, I mean, their fill rate is amazing at 18%. But that's enough of the comparison. So I also want to bring up this point, because some of you should be aware of this. If we just take the gross profit, so if we do not even consider the fees that were paid in the last 7 days, the gross profit of what whitewhale managed to make in the last 7 days was $223. Which comes out to about $31.85 per day. If we take that and we annualize it to figure out, let's say if they kept the same pace, how much would their gross profit be over the course of 1 year? That number would be $11,627. Now, if we take that figure and we also put up against how much UST is currently deposited within the UST Vault on whitewhale, it's about 30 million in there. We can see that with these profits, again, the fees are not even included. The return on that capital, the return that you would be seeing is 0.038%, okay? 1/3% would be the return you would be seeing if whitewhale is able to make all the profits they made this past week without having to pay those transaction fees. Now, the reason why that's so important to note too is because there is a withdrawal fee for withdrawing your money out of whitewhale. And as we're back on this page here, if I go to the withdraw tab and I enter $100 here, notice that the treasury fee is 10 cents. You might think, well, that's absolutely nothing, right? 10 cents. But here's the thing, as we increase the figure here, notice how the withdrawal fee continues to rise, right? Now it's at $100. So there's a sliding withdrawal fee, which is about 0.1%. It's what they charge. And no matter how much you deposit in, it's always going to be there. Now, the reason, again, that matters is because if you're looking to kind of deposit your money into whitewhale, maybe possibly withdraw just a month down the line, in doing so, you might actually end up underperforming Anchor simply because of that withdrawal fee, the fact that it's not a fixed fee, right? So if you're putting in $10,000, in that case, you'd lose $10 just hopping in and out of that. So you have to make sure you understand that, especially once you're seeing just how little profit whitewhale is currently making. Now, I do want to bring up some conversations that I did have with Sebastian on his Discord in the public. On this specific conversation, he does mention something, which is the fact that they do send out test transactions on a constant basis. I have no clue how many they are sending out, but it's worthwhile knowing that maybe the amount of failed transactions are overstated right now in my Excel sheet. Possibly maybe 100 of those per day are coming from their team testing things out. So that is something to keep in mind, that possibly if they stop testing maybe as often, the fees wouldn't be as great as they currently are. Maybe their success rate will also be higher. When I asked him what his success rate is based on what he believes it to be, he did say it's 3%. Now, when we looked at our Excel sheet, it seemed to be at around 1% and lower. Could there really be that many failed transactions to kind of end up pushing his success rate from 3% to 1%? I'm not gonna say much there, but possibly 3% is on this overstated. Now let's talk about solutions. What can whitewhale do to improve? What are they currently working on? What are they thinking of doing? So the first thing to touch on is sending multiple transactions, and there's a reason for that. So remember, as I said earlier, when whitewhale sees an opportunity in the mempool and they send out their transaction, if by the time their transaction, it's time for them to for the node to process their transaction, if the parameters are not met, it simply fails it, right? Well, that's because whitewhale has to put in a specific order size, and if someone beat them to the punch, then their order is not really going to be successful since it will be too large, for example, right? Let's say someone kind of filled 90% of that Arb opportunity. There's like 10% opportunity left, but whitewhale's trade size would end up actually moving the pool itself, and you'll end up losing money there. So what he's saying is that, well, we can send out multiple transactions in the event that someone does beat us to the punch, because sometimes when you beat to the punch and someone else grabs that Arb trade, they don't grab the whole opportunity. They might grab 80% of that opportunity, 90% of that opportunity. So what he's saying, maybe we'll send in multiple with different trade sizes. That way, if one transaction, the parameters is not met for that one, maybe it is going to be met for this one, depending on whether or not they got beat and by what percentage of an Arb opportunity still exists out there. Sebastian has also been speaking about the fact that they do want to improve their relationships with validators, keeping in mind the fact that when a transaction is inside a mempool, it is with the nodes and with the validators. And I guess the idea is that if you're able to somehow have a better relationship with validators, have a better connection to the mempool, you'll be able to see the transactions hitting the mempool quicker. And if you can see them hitting the mempool even quicker, you can get your trade in even faster. So that's another thing that they're currently looking at. Now, 3 things that they're talking about for improving their bottom line here. The first thing is flash loans, and they mentioned this recently. And what flash loans is going to be is whitewhale will basically allow other people to borrow money out of the UST Vault. So I would imagine mostly it's for other people running an Arb Bot, that if you want access to more capital, whitewhale will give you the technology where you can get a flash loan, right? So a loan for one transaction just for, half a second or just a fraction of a second. And whitewhale will take a percentage of that loan. So if you do borrow it for specific transaction, and the transaction does go through because whitewhale will put in some security parameters to make sure that there's no exploits regarding flash loans. Well, whitewhale will try to take a piece of that. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of this service being offered because I feel like whitewhale is kind of deviating from being the person that is mining for gold to being the person that is selling the equipment for those who want to mine gold, right? Because we're basically financing other people that are running Arb bots in this case. Another thing they want to add to the table, which is pretty interesting, they refer to it as a hiding game, and this would come with basically a partnership, let's say of Astroport, and there will be a feature on Astroport where a whale, if they want to do so, they could utilize this on Astroport. Again, nothing's really set in stone here, this is just an idea they're having. But a whale can go to Astroport, they could utilize, let's say, whatever the name of this is going to be, we're just going to name it hiding game. And in doing so, if they want to submit a large transaction, it would basically let whitewhale know that, hey, we are about to submit this transaction size, and whitewhale will basically know about it, and they will make sure to get their trade placed into the mempool right as that whale's trade is being placed into the mempool. Now, the reason why the whale would agree to this and use Astroport in this case, or use the specific feature on Astroport, is because whitewhale will reimburse some of the losses that the whale takes due to slippage, right? So if whitewhale ends up making $10,000 in profit from this arbitrage opportunity, whitewhale may take $5K of that and give it to the whale for basically, helping whitewhale stay on top of this. And, whales might end up using this since they're able to get some of that slippage back. So that looks pretty attractive. So we'll have to see. And the last thing they want to touch on here is liquidation. So I'm guessing this is just typical liquidations that you would see, maybe for those that take part in Kujira. Maybe, so maybe they'll do something along those lines, liquidating people on Anchor, liquidating people on Mirror. I haven't seen too much talk about this, but this is, I guess, something they want to bring onto the table to help boost the profits that would be available to them. Now, it's also worth noting that over the course of the next couple of weeks, whitewhale will be releasing version 2 of their bots. They're changing the language in which their bots are currently written in. They believe that by doing so, they could reduce the latency that they're currently going through when it comes to submitting their trades. Because it's pretty clear right now that whitewhale wants to get to here in terms of bot performance, but they're clearly all the way down here. I mean, it's a big gap, especially because they have so much capital that is currently dedicated to their platform. I mean, 30 million, right? So to try to get a solid return for $30 million worth of capital, I mean, you do have to be able to grab a whole bunch of arbitrage trades on a daily basis. Now, I do hope that whitewhale continues to try to improve on their bots' performance, because when I see them integrating other products such as flash loans, or possibly going after liquidations, what that kind of tells me is that maybe they're kind of coming to terms with the fact that they will not really be able to provide a substantial yield when it comes to arbitrage, that other people will continuously outperform them, and they're thinking, okay, what can plan B be? If we cannot deliver a yield by taking advantage of our arbitrage opportunities, then can we do it in a different manner? Now, I hope they don't go down that path, because it kind of deviates away from their whole white paper and deviates away from their whole project's idea. Going into things like liquidations, sure, that sounds great and all, but I mean, there's plenty of solutions for stuff like that if you want to take part in it, right? I think a lot of us are here because we are not able to build out our own Arb bots, but we would love to still take part in it. More importantly, also help UST keep its peg. Even if UST is above $1 or below it, we want to take part in it. Now, I do hope that whitewhale ends up being successful, because I feel like if they do find a way to make their Arb bot competitive, it is going to be a great way to generate yield for people. Because right now on Anchor, the only protocol that we have that really generates a safe yield for people is Anchor. But as we know it, Anchor will not be able to pay a 20% APY forever, right? This might be the last year that they're able to do so, unless the amount of borrowing on their platform really skyrockets, right? So I really support whitewhale in trying to be able to deliver consistent gains in a different manner. I really hope that they succeed. But it's not going to be an easy thing. It's not going to be an easy thing. And I do wish that they would have launched their product probably a year later than they did, right? Like, they sold us their token, I think, in December, right? And here they launched in February, and as we saw, their Arb bot is just not making any money. So you can't really tell me that, that they launched when they should have launched. I mean, They should have waited much longer and at least have their Arb bot making profit on a daily basis, before releasing their platform to the public. But with that being said, if you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. If you're interested in more Terra-related content, you could always subscribe. Any questions, comments, complaints, leave them in the comments below. Other than that, thank you for watching and have a great day.